Hi everyone. Welcome to the full stack developer community again. Just as a reminder, we meet approximately every 8 weeks for learning and sharing and networking. Formats usually short talks, a bit of discussion here, and then we go down to the diner. There's free drinks available, and we do a range of things of interest to sort of a general full stack software developers, and that can cover everything from coding, testing, deploying, security, that kind of thing. So to everyone on campus, we do have the dates lined up for the next year. I think I'm booked just because this room is or one of these rooms is quite difficult to get. So the next one's in 8 or 9 weeks, Monday 20th of May, whatever that is. So today we've got Callum. You might have remembered, was it 2 times ago? January? No, November even. November. Callum started a talk about software development as experimentation, which we always knew was going to run into 2 meetings. So this is the second one. And then I thought, as soon as we've got the new GitLab Ultimate, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to play with it or give some feedback. I've had a chance to play. I've got 1 or 2 slides, but we do that. But then we go down to the diner. If we all line up together, you can get the drinks for free, and then we go and sit. Well, whoever's down first, go and reserve a table, and we can all sit there. All right, I'll pass over to Callum. Stop sharing. Hold on, stop sharing.
Okay, if there's anyone who's sort of with this podium set up?
Have you got Zoom on your top bar? Just go the word Zoom on your top bar. You just go share screen.
Oh, great! Just does it.
Yeah.
Would you just normally join the meeting as per normal?
No, I don't know. Just go share screen without joining.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, amazing. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Hi, everyone. Gosh, I'm bracing myself for that to be worse than it was. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm Callum. I'm a developer in the Genomic Surveillance Unit. Before GSU, I mostly did full stack development in a healthcare setting. I'm going to talk about software dev as experimentation, part 2 of that. So when you talked about how you can view software dev as experimentation, and what's good to do is increase your rate of learning and break it down into increasing your number of experiments and increasing the amount you learn per experiment. So that's kind of the structure. So part 1 of the talk was the first half of the equation. Part 2 is the second half. If you can catch up if you're interested. So the number of experiments, things like feature flagging. If you're interested in that, you can catch up on the recording. Please ask questions anytime, and also share if there's stuff where you're like, oh, this has worked well for me, or this really didn't work well for me. Please do share that. It'd be great to hear from everybody. Get into it. So yeah, what are some things you might want to learn about? To get some, you've got a piece of software, you're deploying it. What are some things you might be interested in about it?
Whether it has any vulnerabilities.
Yeah, vulnerabilities. Yeah, for sure.
Performance.
Yeah, definitely.
Common use case.
Yeah. Anyone on? I don't know how many folk we've got online, but just by all means, just shout out. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we might be interested in the systems. So our systems, their performance. External systems, so maybe vulnerabilities in external systems or our own systems. And on the people side, our users, about use cases. So to what extent does what we've built actually meet the use cases, satisfy the use cases? And maybe we might also be interested in our team as well. So I've obviously slided it out of order. About that. So yeah, I'll just go first into kind of content. So yeah, done the kind of framing. So we'll talk about what can we learn about how. I'll give you guys an example around rolling out a new feature to bring the stuff together, and then like an example kind of system and user monitoring sort of system so you can see it together. Talk a bit about tools and techniques for learning about users, and then cover off a couple of areas, so usability and security and governance. I've got what sort of a frat model-ish, maybe. I mean, please take a pinch of salt. And then questions. So covered that one. Okay, so the system side of it, what are some ways we could learn about it? So we did performance, I guess performance testing, and maybe like instrumentation. What are some other ways we could learn about the systems part of what we're doing? No worries.
Monitoring and alerting and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, monitoring, alerting.
It's somewhere it interacts with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, so we've covered those things already. So we've got, and some of the parts of this are like, so we've got logs, so logs from both our application, but maybe also logs from other systems, so infrastructure logs, maybe logs from a web application firewall might help us understand about vulnerabilities. Metrics across all of those, so kind of like numbers about which on the performance side. We might be interested in both behavior of code, so logs around code, but also logs at requests, so HTTP logs, whether the requests are failing or not, exceptions, whether something's available or not. And I guess, yeah, we might be interested in our application, but also the underlying infrastructure, and we can do that for this in dashboarding. So a couple of ways we can do that. So these are just a couple of tools I've used, but I'm really keen to hear what other people have used. So I use Sentry quite a bit, found that good. I'd be really interested, is anyone using Sentry on site? In particular, is anyone using the GitLab integration of interest? Okay, so something we haven't, I've been kind of encouraged us to consider it in GSE. I haven't kind of done a, so I use a lot in other places, and I've been trying rotating from GSE as an option. One of the things we've been thinking about is cost, and we haven't really gone for it yet because of the cost of it, trying to kind of limit our use of SaaS services from a license point of view. But I know that GitLab comes with the Sentry integration, so that's very interesting, I think. And I think also what's interesting about Sentry is you can self-host it. Well, the cost, of course, of doing that in terms of person time. But GSU use Grafana and Prometheus. In the past, I've used Microsoft App Insights a lot and found that very, very good. Used Uptime Robot. What have you guys got experience of, and also online in terms of like tooling for this? And I'm even interested to understand how much, like, because some of this is, we might be like, actually, do you know what? We get by really well without a lot of this stuff, and that's good to know as well.
Well, it's incredibly useful as a simple way to better flow some metrics at something. You can easily find that as a simple API call. Nagios is a bit old in the tooth, but it still works. Basic checks. We pushed quite a lot, but people were starting with OpenStack, which was straight ahead. But it's kind of like you have all the bit built into your OS, and you've got a web page you go straight to for it. That in it, because a lot of the problem with metrics are you find out you need them after you find out you need them. So it's good to be able to look back over time and say, okay, now I think this is a problem because or suddenly you're looking at it, but it's actually memory footprint. For example, your problem if you look back over time, find it consistent. Maybe your memory is just opening up, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose, some of the context of this talk, I suppose, is I'm used to working in an environment where like, I just can't get hold of the users I work with. Like you just can't. Like they're doctors who are really busy, and they're across the UK or whatever. So probably a lot of this is with a pinch of salt of like, if it's relatively cheap, just go speak to your users to find out what's going wrong or how to improve things. And you might not need a lot of this stuff, but it's good to know that they exist. And thanks for all those suggestions. Are there any other kind of tools folk are keen to kind of share as things they found helpful?
We use Rancher and the view on it, and we've also used less the actual system as a whole and more the database. So we've also debugged using PG admin, the admin tool for Postgres. Yeah, we found a lot. When I say a lot, we found some serious problems that way. So
how are you using PG admin? I've used kind of Rancher, and all of these I'm going to write down as well. I'll add them to the slides so that we can share them.
With PG admin, we found that one of the tables had really long read times. I don't remember what the problem was. And we also found out that a lot of people were using the logins without authorization because we had something like 50 sections open at one point. It's quite funny, but yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Nice. Okay, that's great. Any ones from the Zoomers? I've heard a lot of what Zoomers, Zoomies. No, okay.
We also dabbled with Logstash and Kibana. We're not using that at the moment primarily because logs weren't coming out very, very nicely. There were like all sorts of multi-line, which that's the fault on our side, not Logstash. But that can be quite handy, especially if you're just ingesting like web server logs, which are all nice and you can tokenize them up.
This happened before I joined the team. Got signals, and it kind of sends the Slack messages, channel, whenever.
Nice. That whole kind of workflow integration is so important. Like, what do you've got these logs, and then what do you do with them, and how do you surface them and create them and stuff? Okay, so what about learning about users? What are some ways we can learn about like our users and their behavior and kind of product things?
Talk to them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Hideous analytics frameworks.
What was that?
Hideous.
Excellent.
Monitoring your every move.
Yeah. Got a bit of that coming up. But it's a big thing like privacy and what does it, that's something I'll talk about more. So anyone use kind of particular analytical frameworks or tooling for?
We use Matomo,
Okay.
which sang a host.
Right.
So you just,
like Google Insights where this doesn't require a GDPR consent apparently.
So you just have to register your site with them, and then it's a tiny bit of code on each.
It's like pseudonymous, except it's apparently not requiring GDPR stuff. So
They send a host.
they do,
Yeah.
Do you know who hosts?
That I don't know. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. We just do a service desk request.
How is it spelled again?
Matomo.
Oh, that's really good to know. But I hadn't come across that at all. That's great to know about. Yeah, brilliant. And that's kind of yeah, that's
I'll find it out.
yeah, great result. Like knowing that kind of stuff because I was going to talk later on about how it's a big deal to integrate something. It's not so technically, but from a broader legal and government view. So Matomo, is that so instrument you can collect some events, you can then query them, do alerts on them. What's the kind of functionality of it?
Mostly, what I've seen is I don't know how it does this without. I keep saying GDPR, but without cookies or like GDPR consent, it somehow gives you insights into where your users are in the world. It shows you what pages they're accessing, how frequently pages you access, how many unique visitors each page gets per day or per time interval. So yeah, really cool.
Okay, brilliant. Hey, so we're covering software as experimentation, and this is about how you can increase your learning for every experiment you do. Go through a few parts of that. So in terms of users, yeah, definitely just speak to them for sure. If you can just go speak to your users, then that's great. I think other things are like inviting feedback for your app. You can learn from support interactions and from product instrumentation that we've been speaking about. So yeah, some places to usual suspects and like Google Analytics, Mixpanel, Intercom for the support side. But yeah, that Matimo is really good to know about, which is an internally hosted one. So let's give an example now. So let's imagine you develop a new feature, and I'll talk to one that sort of involved in because I know about that. So we broke it down. So we've got the user side of it, people side of it, the system side of it, sort of external and internal. So imagine you've together this kind of comes together and how almost give motivation for this kind of instrumentation. So imagine you've got something which allows you to ask your GP a question. So on ask them a question. So new feature, adding to your and you're putting that out in the world already. So one thing you might be interested in is got your feature. How does it actually what's experience actually like for patients and for doctors and nurses, whatever? This isn't going to be, you're only going to be able to know so much of this stuff up front because some of this you just got to get out in the world and see how it actually works. So imagine it, you get introduced a new workflow. What does that mean for the doctors? Are they going to get more busy and then they're going to be unhappy about it? So some of this is you're learning about the business side, much the product side. Is the product easy to use? You can only learn so much about that sort of in the lab, so to speak. External systems. So maybe like maybe you've got an external medical record system you interact with, and in our world that might be like interacting with like EBI systems. So you made this change. How well does it work with, say, the GP's medical record system? What happens if I put an emoji or a non-English kind of character in there? What will happen there? You might not be able to test some of these cases until you're actually out in the world. What about people's sort of phones? Like, does your software work on people's phones, or the weird and wonderful like phones we have? Yeah. So what about like even interacting with other features in your own product? Like maybe so in this case there was like a thing for asking questionnaires, and then it went into a backend that's a bit like Slack. So what's going to be what's the knock-on usability and performance impact on this other internal system? And then like your team, maybe this is going to mean there's more support for your team and how you're going to support them well. So that's kind of you think. So you're obviously going to do loads of stuff up front where you're going to like test this stuff, but a lot of this you're going to have to get out in the world and learn from it. And then concretely, this is like an example of what if you go more down the instrumentation route, what that could look like. So the kind of back-end system for that previous example looked like user and system behavior be measured. User behavior be measured through app insights, through writing lots of code that says like if user clicks button X, then track that, for example. Some more or less automated. That app insight's been exposed as like a query interface, so you have to go back in time as we spoke about, through dashboards, through alerts, and then also system behavior coming through both been stored and presented for app insights, but also through Sentry, and similar to Eric to what it was called that you guys use in Hydra, but yeah, so similar thing, like being able to kind of alert when something goes wrong. This is the kind of thing like you don't need, like if you can just go and chat to users and they go work on the desk the other side of the office, like this stuff's probably overkill, but it's sharing expertise. Maybe if it's useful for projects, maybe you're deploying something for EBI or for partners in Africa or whatever that we've got some of that in Hydra, or for like opportunities in the future where it's needed. Right, covered that. Yeah. So yeah, of course, speaking to users, that's great. Inviting feedback. So I took the left-hand side one from Sequencescape. So that goes a really long way, just inviting feedback. And if you're going to do this, I think really making sure to communicate to your users that when you get feedback that you're grateful for it. Because a lot of time that doesn't happen, it just goes into the ether and you just think like, why have I done that? If that's the behavior you want, you've got to reward it. So thanking people, if you're going to do this as well, it not just being a silo, so not just being developers and not just being product managers that have access to it, you're going to make much better decisions to the team if it's transparent. Yeah, and I think this right side one, Visual Studio Code, they did a similar thing. And I think also, like, from a morale point of view, not being afraid to like share stuff. So it's worked in the past, like we just wrote the feedback on the wall because it helped motivate us, and that's something you can do very cheaply. Get some post-it notes, whack it on the wall, can also really help create a nice sense of kind of togetherness. Yeah, support. I think this is the one you should often think about, like support and like learning, and kind of necessarily think about it as like improving your product. The thing is, all those people that are coming into your support desk, they've got some sort of unmet need. There's something about your product they can't do that maybe could be better if the product was better designed or better documented, whatever, it wouldn't be needed. And also it tells you like what people care about. And I found, for me, like one of the best ways to like really understand users, if you're one thing in chat's great, but and it's great to maybe to do some, like, as a developer, as an engineer, to be on the support rota every so often can be quite helpful to learn stuff. But actually chatting to users is really good as well, because then you really get to understand what do they care about. Like if you know in the past you're chatting to a stressed out practice manager, and that gave me way more empathy and understanding of what that person's life is like and where the product they're working on fits into it, than any amount of reading, like, secondhand kind of user research would do. Yeah, and then we've got the kind of product instrumentation that we spoke about before. I don't know, like some folk might not have like told used these tools before, and it might, so that broadly speaking, what you're doing is you've got a product, you're capturing those events, and then from those events you can understand maybe on a per user basis what was the particular user's journey been, and understand things from that. Or you might think in aggregate, what a particular journey is, how they're working. And so if you've got a particular, so maybe this is from like this mixed panel, and I think this is showing kind of like sort of an e-commerce flow. So what you really want is someone to complete a purchase, but they have to go through steps of signing up, dealing with payment. And if what you're trying to do is optimize this flow and get this event, then you really want to think about the dropout. So in the past, I've done this with things like referral mechanisms. So if you want to get someone to have found out about your product, installed it, used it, liked it, told someone else about it, and you want that lead, you've got to like treat that as an engineering problem and optimize it. So then a couple of bits to talk about in terms of actually doing this and doing it well. So in terms of usability, signal to noise is a really big thing. So often this goes wrong because there's just way too much noise. So particularly if it's about system behavior and it's about exceptions, way too much noise, and you just kind of ignore the channels or whatever. Has anyone kind of hit that problem in their own teams and got a suggestion of what's worked for them? Don't know, Eric, how you do things in Hydra.
Yeah, we did have one point that the stage environment is sending us tickets every 3 hours.
Yeah.
8 messages a day. Lasted for. We didn't really like notice what is going on in the middle of those messages. Maybe there were some other systems alerts that is within those messages which we missed. It could have been the case. That would be a bad situation.
Yeah, definitely, and then that happens a lot. So a couple of things you could try. So one, sort of filtering out egress or in your monitoring service stuff that's not relevant and being really disciplined about this. So by egress, I mean in the piece of code that's like tracking stuff, like having explicit like ignore certain things, because you might have junk that comes up, it's like a known issue. Or in your monitoring service, so something like Sentry, you can configure blanket filters on the way into Sentry, and you have workflows around snoozing certain messages. So that will help you understand. It's very, very similar to like what in monitoring situation that you put. Alert review sessions can be really good. So you can sometimes get a behavior where you've got like one person in the team that like has the context, and they're always the person who has to like look at the monitoring. So having sessions with the team where you'll get together, you all triage stuff together, you share that knowledge, and then like you then don't get that like dependency. And being really strict about if an alert isn't actionable, then yeah, go for it.
So about the review session, something that's worked in a team that I've been in is having someone who, a rotating role, but someone whose job it is to try and squash alerts effectively
Yeah.
and make up, and having that be different from the person who is on call. That's right. So you've got someone taking someone else's job. If you know when you get 20 tickets coming, you go, if we need all 20 of them, you know, or those kind of things. So look at what can you know, is everyone ignoring this alert because it comes through regularly and oh, we don't know about that kind of thing. So, but moving that around between different people, that's it's kind of like a micro version of the alert review session, but it needs someone fairly motivated. So yeah, find it very helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Because you've got this problem of like kind of tragedy of the commons, like whose problem is it in a team, and so actually having it's at one point in time it is someone's problem, and there's clear accountability. It's often never going to be like this stuff's never going to be like that urgent. Possibly like particularly the kind of low value alerts, it's easy to ignore them. But the problem is, if you're in a situation where you really need the alerts, you don't want to be in a situation where it's like you can't see the signal for the noise, and then you're really in trouble. Okay, so a bit about. Just want to do a time check actually. How am I doing?
It was 2 o'clock now.
Okay. Maybe I might just kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
I was wondering whether to sort of maybe bring it to the end of the next 5 minutes or so. We'll keep going.
I mean, we've only got after this. We haven't got another sort of proper
Yeah.
talk. We've just got GitLab stuff. So I mean, you can carry on for 15 minutes or
Okay.
whatever. But
that everyone's still kind of, you know, that's great. I just wanted to sort of check in on that. So I'll go for another sort of. Okay, so we covered usability, we've got signal to noise, we've got understandability. Okay, so here's some examples. Does anyone know what's going on in any of these? Can anyone guess? These are a couple of like sort of log messages or product analytic events. So I'd be really surprised. So I've made them very quick, but I wanted to simulate like what it's probably going to be like is if you had some of you handed over to say like the product manager or like product stakeholders in your team, you handed over things that you're probably very familiar with. I know exactly what these mean, but you know, this is what it's like for most people looking at a lot of the concepts we speak about. So this is now, how about this? Does that make sense? What this might be? Okay, and what about this? Okay, so it's still a bit of jargon, but it's a little bit closer to something that's going to be useful. So this is really talking about the kind of product analytics side. So for like, if you stuff that's going to be useful for like developers, but also product managers, designers, business stakeholder support. So so this first example is related to maybe a question around in a medical context. Maybe you're sending text messages to patients. Someone in an operational team or business team might be asking, should we shorten the template? Maybe this is my default templates people can use to reduce cost for GP surgery. And maybe they're interested in what's the effect? Like, are you quite often, the way that the pricing works is that you, bit like how old school technologies worked. When you hit a boundary, you then go up an extra price. If you can kind of most of the time squeeze into the boundary, you're gonna get a lower cost for GP surgeries. This is kind of saying something like server hydrogen using this particular like C# class had 3 fragments. No one's gonna have any hope of understanding that. But if you talk about it in the more broader domain language, it's going to be a lot better. Secondly, this one was about if you've got a workflow. Remember we had that workflow diagram before. It was like all the different bits of drop off. When you've got a workflow, it's like what you're trying to do is rather than people running the GP surgery be on a hold, you try and get them to like send a question in. You might be trying to think about what if you add an extra NHS number, which maybe benefits further down the flow and means that doctors know who the patient is more accurately. Is it going to be worth additional friction on up front? Because if you're someone who's like, you're trying to get some help from your doctor in the morning, you're trying to get a text message out before you go to work, no one knows an NHS number. Are you going to want extra friction? So a business, a product manager or a developer, if you're doing it, might be looking at is what's going to be the effect of adding the extra bit of friction and trying to trade off two different areas. Things that's also not a great piece of work. Like if you can kind of make it so if you can support the product managers to do that kind of work, or the designers, that's also like really desirable property than a developer necessarily needs to do that analysis just because they happen to be the only people who can access information. And now a bit on security and governance, which Kieran talked about earlier on. So some of the things to think about security and governance are your agreements with users and your agreements with third parties and how you handle personal identifiable information. I'm not like super strong on these top two, but I definitely would say I think first off, it's definitely something to think about, and that's why it's great to have that. I've already forgotten how to pronounce it. Great. Metome, lovely. So that's really great to have, because yeah, you do need to think about if you're going to use something like Mixpanel, what's your agreement with users about the fact that you've shared some of their information with Mixpanel or whatever. And definitely do seek like legal and governance support with that if you're going down that route. But I think the second main thing I do want to say is to challenge the perception that you necessarily can't use cloud or SaaS products if you wanted to. I've worked on stuff that literally handle like tens of millions of patient records and use various of the cloud and SaaS products that I've spoken about. It's very much like it's not. I've had such hand recently where similar things people are like, oh, we can't do that with a self-host or whatever, and it's just not. It's not true from a compliance or technical point of view. It is possible, but you do have to do things right and get all the right things in place. In terms of personal identifiable information, wanted to share a little bit about like an example of how you can do this if you are using some of these kind of third parties. So this is like a sort of two-zone architecture I've worked with. So one way of thinking about it is to have like different zones for the kind of personally identifiable information, or perhaps the other commercially sensitive information, and then a second zone for pseudonymized personally identifiable information, and having different access control and scoping the services based on that. So you might have your applications and your databases that need to deal with personally identifiable information, and they'd have much stricter access control, maybe coming through a bastion, got RBAC, network access control, and maybe you have something like a process where devs can temporarily elevate in order to access these things, and that's recorded. But then at a step down, you might have another zone where you have services like App Insights and Sentry, and that would have access control, RBAC, 2FA, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same level of access control, and that might be then open up more broadly to like your product team. So that's one way of thinking about it. I think pros to this is it's very easy to reason about. The cons is it can be very frustrating if you're, say, someone in the product team who really does need like some user specific information, and it could create like a lot of dependence on the developers to have to kind of like service that request because they've got the access. Some of the workarounds is to like say if you've got like you've got an ops team that need to interact with individual users, you can kind of give them an ability to kind of turn the user details into the pseudonymous identifier and then look it up in those systems. And another kind of play you could take, I suppose, would be if you're particularly concerned about sensitive information, you might think about in your egress having rules that filter out the sensitive information like credit card numbers, NHS numbers, whatever. Maybe having some canary values, so you actually inject some like known values in, so that you can then later on check that they come through and check the rest of your monitoring works. In your tests, you could be checking for those canary values, and if they ever appear, you know that something's gone wrong in your egress or someone's introduced something they shouldn't have done. You could configure your monitoring service, so things like Sentry have things around personal identifiable information screening, so they can drop on the egress in, they can drop it. Ideally, you'd never let it get to that point, but They do have a lot of features around that. And I think in some ways you have to kind of expect, even if you're not intending to share sort of personal identifiable information with a third party like Sentry, things are going to go wrong. So you need at a certain scale, there are going to be times things go wrong and you share more. So you do have to make sure that in the worst case, you're still going to be able to handle it, like asking them to drop the information or whatever it needs to be done. And then you might also want to have alerts and dashboarding to make sure if the identifiable information did get in that you'd know about it. So this is really like defense in depth, but it's kind of trying to say, how do you have a kind of a cloud SaaS option, but also if you're working with really sensitive information. Okay, so to recap, we've covered overall framing, thought about different things we want to learn about, talked about some techniques, and then some particular off-the-shelf tools and in-house tools we can use. Gone through a couple of like worked examples, and then we've covered off some like things to think about on usability and security and governance. So up for taking any questions or going into detail on the bits interesting.
All right then. As the titular full stack developer, how do you? So you have to know one or two programming languages, some back-endy thing. You've got to be secure. You've got to be user helpful and what have you. That's already a load. If you then add monitoring systems that observe your systems and who watches them, you're building up more and more and more systems that each need administration at some level. So for me, all this stuff is completely out of the question because our team is resourced for that sort of, oh yeah, this guy will take care of keeping the Sentry system working, and this guy will take care of, it strikes me that even you start to need, should we say, the large end of what you might call a Scrum team, to be able to stay on top of all these different ways of inspecting your systems, which points it towards it being quite only fitting for very large applications or very large user bases.
I think, yeah, so I guess some of it's pretty worth saying. So I think some of this is about kind of like role definition. It's pretty worth, might give a bit of context. So my personal background is a kind of like product engineer in the way that Intercom would frame that. It doesn't really make any sense to people as saying this, so I don't introduce myself as a product engineer because people know what does that mean. But the kind of framing of the role that Intercom would have and that we've adopted in some previous places is a developer might be kind of doing development and getting into some product management, and kind of when the problems that your business is solving are very much product type focused. It's things like how do you make a referral funnel work really well and that kind of stuff. There can be benefit in the developer role being very kind of, if you like, very big. But that only works if kind of that's what the expectations are and there's the support in place for it to work like that. I think things that work really well are having a lot of this stuff as like shared services. So it's not like, it's not like a developer in a team does this stuff from scratch. It's a similar platform to the same way that we do. We don't build servers from scratch. We don't build Kubernetes from scratch. Whenever we consume that as a service. So I think for this stuff to be adopted, you kind of need you kind of need it to be kind of sort of something you can kind of put in quite easily. So that's partly where what helps going to kind of the SaaS products, for example. That can be really helpful because they can do a lot of that lifting for you. But as well, it's also great to hear about the in-house solutions. So I definitely put that on there. I'd be interested to hear your Tree of Life perspective on using that particular system, the in-house one, how hard it was to set up and stuff.
Charlie found it, didn't she? And then she said, what you do is you add a link, you add a, I think you did this, Logan, did you were the one that added the,
Just a few lines.
a few lines of JavaScript or an import an HTML file, and then you need a different one for each page or
Yeah,
or something. I don't remember.
I mean, it depends how deep you want to go, because
Yeah.
that's just page based. If you do in you know,
You do like dynamic
Page
routing
stuff,
or
yeah,
React, it might be more complicated.
yeah, we decided we wouldn't do it at that stage.
We just have pages in React and then a different resource thingy for each page, and then that works relatively well for us. It's quite low tech, but it really looks good on the dashboard when you see it. I really like it. And it tells us how many people are hitting each page, how often, whether there's any burst traffic or like whether one page is accessed in the evening, one in the morning and stuff. It's really, really solid. I like it.
It's very good to hear.
I'd like to both support and strongly disagree with you. Both at the same time. See what Paul's got. So the first way is that I completely agree that a lot of these things take people to run. But I disagree that the team should necessarily be running. I think something that we're not great at saying is identifying something that would be useful for me, but also other people, and having that conversation with the wider community to say, we need a Matamo or a GitLab or Flibblebits, and coming together as Sanger to say, right, how do we have a Flibblebits that we can all use, that one team maintains, that everyone else gets to make use of, kind of thing, because we do have core services here, we do have make use of those kinds of things, but quite often what happens is someone, for perfectly valid reasons, goes to scratch its own itch, and then, like everything, a proof of concept system becomes production before you can realise it. And sometimes I think it's helpful if we can say, we'd be really helpful if we had a system that allowed us to gather user feedback, and if we could run that across Sanger, then it lowers the barrier to entry, but also allows people to kind of get on with the stuff that they want to be doing, which is writing the code, etc., rather than say maintaining a system to do that. Thank you for coming to my TED talk.
So I have a meditation to add, which is that we have all these tools now, which make monitoring our systems and observing user behaviors, and the whole UX world has I don't know, maybe it's come and gone. But on the other hand, I feel like all the produced by multi-million-dollar companies or multi-billion-dollar companies stuff is actually becoming more irritating, less helpful, more intrusive, and like that information isn't being used to improve the user life. It's being used to improve middle manager satisfaction reports or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
things like.
I guess it's probably the same thing. If people might say something like, we've got all these technology, we've got all these laptops and phones and web developers, and our lives are still like our lives are more hectic and more busy and more, there's more like hard things to interact with than ever before. So I think it's just a classic thing of like, tools don't mean people's lives get better. So I think really engaging the kind of the responsibility of us as like engineers to like do these things well, I think is really important. And I think and I'd say particularly cover things on kind of privacy and that kind of stuff. But I think also like other examples where this can go really wrong about the Ryanair dark UI pattern. So they work really hard to kind of like make their systems like they measured it really well to make it like a really bad user experience, and that was a bunch of engineers doing it. So I challenge ourselves like it's on us to use these things well. Completely agree with the commentary. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. Thanks everybody.
Right, all right. I have put on the agenda that we could talk about GitLab Ultimate, given that Sanger has invested in this license, and I don't know how much it costs, but I was going to say a considerable cost. Has anyone had a chance to play with any features that they might want to share?
scratch the surface. Seriously scanning. So far, I figured it's really, really easy to get it going, and not quite so easy to make useful. It's really easy to get it to tell you that you've got like 600 vulnerabilities to look at. Sorting out like the 4 that matter from the false positives and the various other bits and pieces. I mean, the things are good, but like it'll, for instance, it'll tell you that in your Docker file you haven't defined what user something run as. Well, yeah, it's correct. But the reason we don't care is we set that elsewhere. In particular case of looking at Docker Compose does it. There are various reasons for that, but so if a plug is in production, it always runs as a user without any unnecessary privileges, but just the static testing. See, oh, there's a Docker file, that's a user line in it, turns you off, which is fine, and you can. There are ways of dealing with that kind of thing. What I'm not yet sure about is the best strategy for dealing with this sort of thing. You can configure all these tools and say, well, ignore this type of error, and after like 500 false positives, you're really tempted to say, right, I'm just going to disable that one because that's always wrong. But then, you miss the one time it really matters. So you don't want to do that. You can, on a case-by-case basis, you can kind of, well, I've looked at that and that one doesn't matter, don't tell me about it again. And that is probably quite safe, but that's a lot of work to go through everything. So I'm not yet sure what the best way to do this is. So that's what my scratch surface.
There's a feature I would like to use. It's the one where you mirror the repo from GitHub to GitLab so that you can build your stuff locally. But unfortunately, the subscription arrived after we had to hack in a dubious cloning exercise inside the pipeline.
Yes, you used to just be able to push GitLab to GitHub. Okay, I've got a few slides.
I would start to check. Do people know there was some training coming for GitLab? We done a survey a while back for people with the users and that kind of a thing. And there's a number of people that responded that they would be interested in some training. But I got a small number compared to the number of people that I expected to be developers. So I'm wondering if we had reached out to the wrong audience or in any sufficient amount of the audience. So looking around the room, there's a lot of puzzle faces. So I'm guessing the answer to that is probably.
Yeah, I haven't come across it. Yeah, I've been looking out for it, but I was aware of stuff you talked last time.
Yeah.
I missed that. But I haven't been there.
So the first set of training is actually happening this Thursday. If you would like to, we haven't quite got to the point that we've got it linked into Workday yet. So if you want to be considered for training for this particular, what they call security essentials, is how to use all the tools to begin with, but also around the kind of the policies and the reporting and stuff like that, which talks to your problem but doesn't actually solve it. So if you're interested in that, please email me directly and I'll try and get together on one Workday to come and gather that, because we're expecting to run this more than once, to be honest with you, until people get used to using it, because the chance of getting everybody on the first session
The thing I noticed is it seemed to start with some very basic stuff and then build up to the more interesting features. Yeah. By the way it's structured, it looked like there didn't seem to be an option for just coming on to find out about, let's say, DevSecOps or whatever types of features you have to do a whole load.
Right, this is one day. The things happening on Thursday is a one-day course covering things like
how to enable DAST, how to enable SAST, the kind of the basics of the kind of security engineering kind of thing.
Right.
And that's what he's really aimed, I think, at getting people aware of what features there are in the system and how they can start to use them rather than an in-depth side of it. Because we didn't really know to begin with where people were going to be interested in going and which talk people.
I think I might be thinking of the wrong email then, because I remember seeing things like, how do you create a branch? And at the basic level.
Yeah.
And
There's lots of training on the GitLab website that you can get for that can start with what is Git, and goes all the way up to there. So I can signpost people to that, but there's a lot more options and certifications that we can go down if people are interested. But I guess that's the first thing, is trying to gather whether or not people are interested and can make time to do that kind of thing. Please email me if you have views, one way or the other.
Well, I've done a few slides, which will probably condense what you're doing on Thursday into about five
Excellent.
minutes, if that's all right. I was playing with the security stuff in GitLab, and you're right, it is pretty easy. I wouldn't say it was completely without Stu. So I was looking at share. Open share screen. There we go. So most to enable things, most of what you end up doing is just including a template that is from GitLab. So really, all you need to do is those first two lines. However, I was trying to incorporate it into our pipeline, which already has certain stages. So I wanted it in a certain stage. By default, it comes into the test stage, which we don't have because we've split it into different ones. So I had to put a few more variables. But that's it. That's all we needed to do for dependency scanning. And what it basically gives you is, in your merge request, when you look on the merge request, you get an extra section once you've added the security scanning, and it basically tells you what you have introduced new in that merge request. Because this was the first time I've done it, so I'm going to get all the things that it thinks are wrong. But I think one really good thing, and that sort of addresses some of what you were saying, Tim, is you can see what's come new. So you might have the 3,000 other things that are low priority, but you can see in this merge request, oh, there's a new high priority thing. Is that something? Has that come about because of the changing the scanner, or is it because I've done something really stupid and encoded a password or whatever in there? So I really like that. So this is dependency scanning. This is just doing the containers. Can't remember. And that's container scanning. And then this is looking at your requirements, and this is looking at your code and doing dependency scanning. That's right. Very similar for the SAS. So this is we had a stage that was doing very much like this with Sneak, and we were correcting lots of the things because we couldn't pass the pipeline without it. So it hasn't detected anything new when I tried this. Again, this first two lines are all you really need. Well, I just changed it because I needed it in the scan stage. Next one, container scanning was again, you include the template. For this one, you have to do two actual jobs. On the previous ones, it creates the jobs for you, so they automatically run. Whereas this one, this just includes a template job, so you have to actually write the jobs. Our pipelines all create two different containers. So I've got two jobs here, one for the API container, one for the UI container. Again, this is this is pretty similar to what Sneak is doing when you have it running your stuff. And yes, this is where we've got
Sneak is a tool that we make available to people who have things like GitHub and external repositories. So if you're using GitLab, you can use the tool built into GitLab that we're talking about now. But if you have repositories built in on GitHub or otherwise external, and you want to do these kinds of scans on, then we have a tool that we can give you access to called Sneak, which does very similar sets of things. If you go to Fred and search for Sneak, then like that.
So this is really nice. I can click on through to these. It can suggest how to fix some of them. And I also did secret detection. Again, nothing very. It's all following the same pattern here. So yeah, that was really easy. Dynamic application scanning. We do again. This is just add another template. I had to configure it slightly. This comes later on in the pipeline because you need an actual deployed application. So we already have in the pipeline review apps deployed on the feature branches. So obviously this has to come after that. So I just configured it to the URL of the review app there. I was running this on sort of our test, our components, which is sort of a test or where we develop. It's not a real website. It was running for about 16 minutes. I don't know whether a real application. I think it goes and looks at things and decides what to do. So it might do it longer in that case. All these don't fail the pipeline. They just run and then tell you at the end. So you can have your pipeline do what you like and build your containers, deploy your review app, and then these can just keep going like afterwards. And then later on, I think they're possibly more useful when people are reviewing the merge requests to see what's happened, rather than being something that we need sort of every 2 minutes that when you're doing it. Can someone find the remote and just
Should be doing it inside the team.
yeah, so thanks, Carlo. Yeah, again, you do that. So from the, as I say, we haven't really deployed this yet. This was just a bit of R&D, but I was quite impressed. It was really simple to do. It's really nice to have it integrated in merge requests, and you can then see a security dashboard in GitLab and sort of see the current state of your project. For some of them, you can run on demand scans as well, possibly with especially the DAS or the fuzzing. I think it was fuzzing. You can do different levels, so you can have like a quick one any merge request, and then a 24-hour one running, on demand. I didn't play with that. That was just a bit more. There were various reasons I didn't do that. But now you can also have dynamic scanning on API, which I've just tested with the browser one. You can also set merge request approval settings. So you, for example, not allow merge requests to be approved or merged unless it improves the security rating of the app, which is quite nice. We might try that at some point. The one slightly bad, but security information is only available once the whole pipeline finishes or reaches a manual stage. So it can delay it. You don't get the quick, unless it's just me doing something wrong. You don't get the quick ones. Some run in a few seconds, and then some might take 15 minutes, but you don't get anything till everything's run.
If you mean job, if it's by job, that's literally the entire pipeline. Like
The entire pipeline.
Oh, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
odd. It sounds like something they do, but I don't know if it's correct or not.
I think it's because they sort of on Git,
Well, you get a report which amalgamates all of the jobs. that
Exactly,
you've run,
yeah.
So
so I can
just
go.
guessing that.
I can go and view pipeline findings, and it sort of shows where they've come from. So the two these are, I think most of them are container scanning, but it would show other, you know, SAS or most files. Okay.
One thing I found just before coming in here was if you find something that thinks a false positive or secret detection, more often pull things out of test.
Yeah.
It's like a password because you block something like what. So you can fairly easily dismiss them. You can say, no, this is just a test or something. But then I found, your dismissals or whatever you call them seem to be pegged to a particular thing like a secret detection of vulnerability or whatever at a particular line, particular button, insert one new line. So if there's 20 unit tests generating these secret detection reports, and you dismiss all of them, it's fine, it's gone away forever. Until you add a new line, run one more unit tests, I think then they're all back.
Out of new import.
I haven't figured out what's best to do about that. I'm guessing maybe you can set up some rules that don't do secrets detection on the test
That's
directory or
directory, yeah.
something maybe.
Surely, yes.
We do have support from GitLab, so the stuff you're running into that you want to ask open a question, we can ask those kinds of things. Also, we are here now. So
I think for that particular one, RTFM would be the response.
But my summary is I liked it, and I think we'll put it into our pipelines this week.
Cool. I'll gladly help with that when I finish with the other
Great.
stuff, which should be this week.
it's worth mentioning as well that that all the stuff that we've just seen is from the perspective of a established pipeline. So adding it in to where you've already got it CI configured. If you haven't got CI configured, then there are literal buttons you can go to in the security that say basically turn this on, turn this on, turn this on. Obviously, there's only going to be some senses where it's useful saying it on. It's not like putting DAS testing on, for example, if your repo doesn't produce a website. But in theory, it's relatively easy to press buttons to turn on. And my colleague Ash, who's virtually with us today, has been doing some work working out where the inbuilt pipelines expect there to be, like for example, the auto scale runners or something like that. We've done some hacks and ISG opened some hacks to make sure that you just enable it and it should run. We found some edge cases. We're still kind of working through with that. Same thing with auto DevOps. You can turn on that in theory should do a lot of this for you, but in their wisdom, they deploy it with a particular setup. That one of the issues is that it uses the same IP range as half the stack.
Yeah.
So as soon as you turn that on, sort of random things break. So we're still working with GitLab to get that working. And that was one of the reasons we wanted to get paid support, is we could ask them, how do you stop it doing that? Because we've got Kubernetes clusters. We've got, there's all kinds of stuff we could tie together. The other thing I want to mention is there is a user group DevSecOps channel in Slack where people are already discussing some of this. They're all welcome to that. Ask questions there. Both myself and Ash hang out there asking things. And if there's stuff that you're not sure about, please do put tickets in, ask for us to help with. If we don't know the answer, which is very likely, we can always go and talk to GitLab people. They're fairly keen to make sure that this works, and there's some resources we point at it. I shall stop shelling.
Great, fantastic. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Any other business, or we can go down to the diner and do any other business down there?
I did have one other thing at the risk of monopolising.
Go for it.
I noticed people are talking about different tools a lot. I wonder if anyone's ever tried to kind of try and make a list of what tools people are using. I know that there have been past look at the DevSecOps tools, but I'm wondering, I think part of the thing is people aren't aware of what else is available, like things like that. But if we start developing a list of what, then we might be able to say, if you're trying to do this, other people in SANG have also been using this. and maybe start curating some kind
So
of like
we-
best practices, good, you know, documentation.
We've,
Kind of
I've talked about it with Priyanka and John. They're
Okay.
setting up. I think it's done yet. Setting up a website for the community, and we said that that would be a really good place that we can sort of maybe next time we could sort of have a make a list and then get it up on the community website or somewhere else. Yeah, or the one place.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there isn't a GitLab pipeline for that.
What for,
Or
yeah,
template
for adding in the for
It's just-
recording the stuff they do.
announces your dependencies to everyone else.
Before you ask.
It's in DevSec manager ops or something like that. Anyway.
Actually, have you looked at some stuff on there? There is metrics on there, like the DORA metrics, that can do reports on things like what's the rate of merge requests and fixes and all these kinds of things. So there is manager ops there, if that's particularly something.
I'd win rated commits anyway, like do it like every few minutes.
We commit every 30 seconds. Right.
Get squashed.
I'm going to stop the recording there then. Thanks, both of you online. We'll see you soon. Stop.